Hi, I'm Karen Case. We're here at the Chicago APWA Expo. I'm the international committee chair for the chapter, and we have people that flew in today to talk about Engineers in Action, which is a nonprofit group that sends volunteer engineers to go do projects in other countries like Ecuador, Bolivia, or Eswatini. It's going to be great. Hi everybody, I'm Karen Case. I'm the International Committee Chair this year with the APWA Chicago chapter. We have done a lot of programs. I know a lot of you have probably heard about our Australia grant, which we are going to be doing again this year. The application should be coming out in the next month or so. But we're trying to create a relationship with Engineers in Action. So this, you'll learn a lot more about them, but it might be some good actual volunteer opportunities for us to work and do projects in other countries. So Julie Allen flew in from Nebraska, Carlos flew in from Bolivia on Tuesday, and AJ flew in from St. Charles, Illinois. So we're all good here, but they're fantastic and super interesting, so please enjoy. And if you are interested in getting involved, we have the international booth down by the chapter booth. Or you can talk to me or Julie Lomax or any of these guys, and we'll get you, involved with volunteer opportunities.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Allen. I'm the Executive Director of Engineers in Action, and I'm so happy to see so many of you here to learn about what we do today. The title of our session, I think, was a mystery to many people, what to do when there is no you. Somebody said, is that like when you're getting fired or something? I'm like, no, that's not what this session is about. So Engineers in Action, we're an international NGO, so a not-for-profit organization. We were founded and started our work in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 2008. So we're 15 this year, and a big anniversary for us. But our work involves working in places around the world, predominantly rural communities, where there are no people like you, where when there's no water running in the community, or when there's too much water in the community, or there's a bridge, there is no bridge to get over a river, or the bridge that they build out of logs is falling into the river and people are dying. Literally, that happens. Who gets called when there is no you? Well, Engineers in Action is one of the places that communities can go to solve their infrastructure needs. So I'll very quickly, because you don't want to hear that much about Engineers in Action, what you want to see are the cool projects we do. So I will go through my part pretty quickly here. That's our vision. There are so many reasons why communities get isolated. It might be their history. We know indigenous communities are grotesquely underserved by the governments in their countries. Geography, sometimes we work high in an area called the Altiplano, and it is so high and remote and difficult to get to. So sometimes that's the problem, but we believe that everyone needs access to essential infrastructure, right? So that's our vision. We work, as I said, in Bolivia, Eswatini, Ecuador, and we also have done some building in the United States. We did some flood relief in West Virginia a couple of years ago. So that's primarily where we're located. Does anybody know where Eswatini is? No, or what it is, right? It's formerly Swaziland, if you remember from 7th grade when you had to memorize all the maps, but it's formerly Swaziland, and it's almost completely swallowed up by South Africa. It's little tiny, but amazing country. It's the last world's absolute monarchy. And so Engineers in Action is actually a department in their government, which is kind of fun, which pretty much makes me an Eswatini princess. So what we do is we say that we do water. Everything that, all the construction, the design, engineering work that we do revolves around water. So water supply, getting water to communities so they can use it. We do micro irrigation to help either improve nutrition in a community or to create an opportunity where they can have greater commerce around agricultural products and obviously safe drinking. Sanitation and hygiene, that's big issues in the communities in which we work. So we make sure that schools, churches, healthcare facilities have clean water, places to wash their hands. This is actually, this picture, that's a solar shower. We even build solar showers for communities to use. And then we also build pedestrian bridges across impassable rivers. Now, people always, when they look at this picture, they're like, they don't need a bridge. They can jump across that. Kind of looks like that. But remember, we always build in the dry season. But when the rainy season comes, this will be completely impassable. And the folks in the community on either side of this bridge won't have access to what's on the other side. So healthcare, school, kids don't go to school for months at a time if they can't cross. Sometimes people cross anyway. They build their own bridges, cross anyway. And many a times when we build a bridge, there have been a number of deaths. And that's one of the things that spurs the community to work with us. We also, we kind of call this our shadow mission, but we do a lot around workforce development. We work with a number of universities. We have chapters at universities that do some of that work, and you can see some of the students. We are, I think, the best, I know, I get to say that, but we have one of the best service learning immersion programs for engineering students. And then we do match our students with corporations. So if you're into hiring, you should talk to us, because we have got some amazing young people coming out who have great experience. To give you an idea of scope, now remember the communities we serve, we had dinner last night, it was so nice with Karen and Julie, and learning a lot about the different communities that you work in, and we have 10,000 people and we have 20,000. Oh, they're big, they have 100,000. Well, a lot of our communities have 700 or 300 or 400. So that 35,000 number doesn't look like a lot, but it is when you think about the size of communities that we help. So we helped 35,000 people last year. That was our record. The thing that's kind of different about EIA is that we don't work in a community that doesn't want us, and we don't build things communities don't want. You know, you are problem solvers, right? And you see something, you're like, we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this. But the community may not want this, 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 and this. What they're really focused on is this one thing. We make sure that we build what they want and need the most and are willing to maintain. So that's one of our differentiators. We also involve them in the entire process. We don't say, we know better. We're awesome American engineers. We know everything. Here we are, and this is what you get. The community works through that whole process with us, and we collaborate. Rural development, we go where other places won't go. We work with local teams in the countries where we work who manage those projects. So we have one of our great engineers with us who works in our Ecuador program. Communities are selected very carefully. So if a community is not that excited and they don't want to learn about how to maintain their infrastructure that we build, we're not interested in working with them. Communities have to have the right assets before we will invest there. And then, of course, we're very inclusive around how we do our work. So those are kind of our differentiators. There are about 1,000 ways you get involved. Those are just a couple. I have a handout lining them all out, 14 or 15 ways. You should all take one, because some of them are super easy. But we would love for you to get involved. But we work with corporations. We work with volunteers, which Karen talked about in her introduction. We would love to have gang after gang after gang of APWA folks come and work with us. We'll show you some projects and you're going to get really excited. Seriously, you're all going to be like, I got to get my passport, got to leave early, because you're going to love these projects. We also work with churches, as I said, universities, and then we do have interns and fellows that come and spend time with us as well. So lots of ways to get involved. So that's EIA, and we're here because we want to work with you to build resilient communities. So I'm going to turn it over now to my fellow speakers. This is, first AJ will speak. So here's AJ's role. He's kind of an interesting EIA person. AJ serves on our board of directors. He's our connector to community service groups. But AJ is sort of our, how shall I say this? He's our wise mentor when it comes to going into countries from the United States and figuring out how to work there. And he brings a lot of experience. And AJ actually left the corporate world and became a professional volunteer. And that became his full-time gig. And so he's going to show you some great projects. All right, so AJ, it's you. All right.
Thanks to the great work that you do, my morning started out fairly normal. I flipped a light switch and the lights came on. Public utility, right? I opened a tap and water came out. But imagine if you were here. These young guys got up before sunrise, and what they are doing is they're filling jerry cans, and this is kind of dark, but there's a donkey there, and the donkey's job is to wait until they load all those 5-gallon, 6-gallon cans on the donkey, and then they take them back. This is in our time zone, actually. If you were to, being a board member, if I talked to you about what I do at EIA, it would be boring, so I picked a couple projects that I've done before. But if you draw a line between Acapulco, which is down here in Mexico City, we're about 5,200 feet up in the mountains. And so let's move on here. Quetzala de la Reforma, they have approximately 180 year-round residents, 300 to 400 seasonal residents. Main primary industry is subsistence farming. They have electricity and 4 telephones attached to the wall, not, yeah. So, and when somebody in town gets a call, there's a loudspeaker that projects. You see a couple of the dwellings here. Whoops. Got kind of a beautiful mountain setting. In the dry season, only La Pila, which is the spring, or if you look at a battery, it says La Pila as the source. But only La Pila has water. And during the dry season, during the wet season, there's water everywhere. But during the dry season, they have to go down into the spring, collect water, ladle it out, fill the jerry cans, and take it home. But they have to ration to about 40 gallons per day per family. I used more than that taking a shower this morning. So they wanted water. So we didn't find any easy solutions. This, by the way, is that same spring in the dry season. That's the same spring where the kids were filling in the wet season. But that spring goes completely dry, and actually what you can do is you can go down and tap a rock. We're not talking Moses here, but it's about the same thing. You tap a rock and you fill a little cup, and you have to fill all your cans. So, Julie mentioned building things that communities don't want. Our first trip, we put in a rainwater harvesting system and a hand wash station. Actually, they did want that because the next time we came to town, they told us to go back in the back and wash our hands. But we did a training program at school. We put in a dry composting latrine, and as we were leaving, they said, "You have extra cement or extra Portland here. Can we use that?" And they said, "Yeah." And so they built a pathway around the dry composting latrine back to the old washrooms because they really didn't want that. And that's a problem sometimes communicating with the community. So the soil was karstic, limestone, so any water that fell just went down the mountain, through the mountain. So we were looking for a long-term solution. We looked at basically lining a pond or whatever, but we figured that the water was always just going to drain down. So we decided to come up with a 100,000 gallon above ground reservoir. And if you remember the picture where they were getting the water out of the spring, they were actually walking down into the spring. Kids got dysentery basically at the beginning and at the end of the wet season. Why? Because they were contaminating the water by walking around the donkey and then walking down into the spring. And so the other thing that we did was we installed daily use tanks. So moving along, we funded the project on it's called a 3x1 grant. The local community here, or the expatriate community here, came up with $10,000. The county matched it in kind with $10,000 worth of materials. The state matched in cash, and the federal government of Mexico matched in cash. So that came up with $40,000. So we used about 25% of our portion to buy materials to get the project started. We used the rest of it for solar panels, air pump, diffuser, ram pump, daily use tanks, pipe, plumbing supplies. Okay, so La Pila, that spring, is up there. We're going to build our tank over here, very rocky soil. I actually did manage to catch him with a shovel full of dirt, but so we began to dig, and it was really rocky. So this guy is an explosives technician, and if you look here, he's got a star drill and a hammer. Bang, 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 drills the hole, sets the charge, and boom. He could do 4 holes a day. Well, we actually had a hammer drill with us, and we borrowed a cup of electricity somewhere, and he went to 4 holes per hour. This guy was in heaven. You'd be walking away, and all of a sudden you hear boom. You get about halfway up the hill, boom. So, I mean, he was great. We gave him the hammer drill after we left. And at the end of the day, we all were beginning to return home. And this really hilly area and steep grades, sometimes we'd sit around. And we went to a warm shower. Okay, here's the shower. You got warm water, heated by this, and the shower is that bowl. So it works. Takes a little bit longer, but you don't use 40 gallons taking a shower. And finally to home, to a guest house that doubled as a storage and corn crib, and they had real rickety beds. Some of us chose to sleep on the concrete floor, actually. Our trip was punctuated by meetings with government officials. By our departure, big rocks were little rocks, and the flow of money from the government had started, and the project was officially underway. We returned in December at the end of the harvest. This is how they harvest. Those are bags of corn. We had a view of the fields from Quasala. This is actually a cornfield, not big compact rows like we have here. This is how they dry their corn. We were hoping that the harvest would be bountiful, and it looked like it pretty much was by the amount of corn that we had to sleep with. We used a day or two to acclimate newer members to the village. Has anybody ever seen a poinsettia tree? That's what that is. Those little plants that we buy at Christmas, they grow big down there. We visited a neighboring town. We took a look at their water storage units. This gentleman on the donkey, this is the same donkey you saw earlier. This is Don Felipe. He grew up in this town. He was 90 years old when this picture was taken, and his dream for that entire 90 years was to have water. And so then we go back to look at our tank. So we're evaluating our tank. You know, it's a little bit bigger than the other ones that we just saw. These donkeys or burros figured out that there was shade here, so they're staying in the shade under the tank where it's cool. Once we had water, they figured out how to open quarter-turn valves. So we had to figure out how to stop that. So here's the inside of the tank. Pouring a concrete roof. And here's Don Felipe again on his donkey, dog Chulo. That's Don Felipe's wife. And unfortunately, Don Felipe passed away about 3 weeks before this project completed. So construction of the quality of life tanks, and basically we installed those PV modules on top, and installed PV modules on top, and we used the sun to pump the water. The tanks were really our batteries, because when the sun was up, the tanks went down and they refilled. If they emptied overnight, they refilled immediately the next morning. We used a ram pump, and this picture up here is in the wet season. There's water everywhere. But we used a ram pump, which basically operates off of, has a drive pipe, pressure differential, and we used that through the wet season to fill the big tank. And so we visited villagers, and yes, these are the places where they actually live. And it usually involved food. This is inside Chuka's kitchen. I like this picture. You know, kids love to have their pictures taken, and they like to see them on the camera. But I want to point out this right here. That is laundry rock. And I was told that when a couple gets married, the husband has to go out and find a laundry rock. And that rock will outlast the marriage. I looked at that and I said, if I bring that home to my wife and said, this is laundry, it will outlast the marriage, because she'll break it over my head, and that rock will outlast marriage because I'll be dead. And so I never did that. So this is dedication and celebration. Out of 27 3x1 grants in the area, there were 2 that were completed, and the other one used electricity, and the community turned it off. So we had members from the emissaries from the President of Mexico, from the Governor of Mexico, and the county president, and they all had their armed guards with them. Now, what's interesting is that they were all different political parties. And we're standing up in this wall here, and I just leaned over to the guy next to me and said, you know, I saw this movie one time, and it didn't end well for the guys here. But anyway, it did end well. And this is the priest dedicating, and the local tombstone maker got some extra work, and he got to do something happy for a time. It's a win-win situation. So what the finished product, or what the finished product means, minimum of twice as much water in the dry season. Daily use tanks provide easy access and prevent or help to mitigate disease. They don't have to walk into the spring anymore. Only costs are for maintenance, no cost for power or operation, because we're using solar modules to do this. It was tested by an earthquake a few years ago, and it's still standing and still working. Quetzala is a Nahuatl Indian word that translates to where the water begins or where the clouds gather. This next slide is probably less than 3 miles away from where we did that project. This is Dina, who acted as our host or our NGO, and that's Don Lode, who was the head of the water committee. He had grown up in this village, and he never even knew this existed. It's just down the mountain where the water filtered to, and it came out here. So that's a water project. I want to do one more, and I'll try to go through it faster. We did a bridge in Guatemala. New bridge serves 8 villages. The closest village is 2 hours away by foot. The farthest village is 2 days away by foot. This bit on the right, you see a barbed wire one by planking bridge that was taken out by a storm. The tree crossing was what they used for 3 years before we got there. So we designed a suspended cable bridge, and we had a nice big excavation for one of the pillars, but there was a mountain in the way on the other end of the trail. So anyway, we worked around that, and we figured out a way to anchor into the mountain. And this is just going automatically. I'm not touching anything. So the area where we were was on the east side of Guatemala. It took 23 hours to get there, and before the slide change, this is our transportation up to near the bridge. Visited a hardware store, went up towards where we were going to build the bridge, and I'm going to try to go back. That was our transportation. That's how we got there. Open truck, hang on to the rails, and some kind of beautiful scenery now for the hike. It's only 5 miles. Found a little tienda along the way. Made some new friends along the way. Here's the trail. And this is how all the material got up. To the bridge site, either on horseback, mule, or somebody carried it. There's a trail going up the mountain. Since the closest village was 2 hours away, we just flattened out the side of the mountain and we stayed there. We had all the comforts of home. I mean, this was great. There's our river. Yeah, we purified water out of the river, and there's a little powder called Pure. We purified it, dumped it into the carboys. When we were hot and tired, we went down to the river, which was where we didn't have a shower. We just used the river. And this was our kitchen. Tortillas, great. Really fresh chicken. And processing the chicken and cooking the chicken turned into a nice meal. This is when peanut butter and jelly meets a kid for the first time. Whoop. This was my rebar crew. My job was to cut all the rebar for this. And so this was my rebar crew. They'd go get what I needed and bring it to me, and we'd cut it and bend it, whatever we had to do. This is when we were surveying so we're shooting the bridge from here over there. I'm a mechanical engineer, and when they said we want the bridge to go from here to there, I'm thinking trebuchet, but that wasn't what they wanted. And so all the rock that we used to build the bridge came out of the river. So all the materials came out of the river. So we go on through, and we're just building a bridge here. There's the west abutment. There's kind of looking through. I think we're just pulling the cables. Oh, we took time out to go to the closest village because we were letting the concrete cure a little bit. Dinner, chicken soup again. There's a soccer game about ready to break out. And then we came back and decked the bridge, drew the cables, decked the bridge. The tree that they were crossing on is down here. The bridge is up there. That tree was very treacherous, and there were stories of people, mothers that had a child in tow, one in her arms, backpack, and lost grip of the child, and it just disappeared. And that's something that we always hate to hear happening. The organization I was working with wrote a lot of rules after this because we took 18 people in the jungle. I only insured 17, and I told somebody that I had to hide in the jungle if we had to use our satellite transponder to get a helicopter. So, interesting facts. 260,000 pounds of rock, stone gathered and hoisted into place by the construction team. 295-pound bags of cement carried by the local villagers 5 miles up that trail. And the bridge was completed in 10 days, about 5 days ahead of schedule. And there is the bridge. There are people. We were testing the load. Wasn't maybe too bright, but and every bridge gets a name. We went once again to the local tombstone maker. And this is the El Puente Rio Benque. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carlos.
Okay, so I don't think I have too much time anymore. I'm gonna try to explain you more or less what is working with communities and why Engineers in Action it's an opportunity to working with them and trying to have a different kind of experience around the world, around the different countries, Bolivia, Ecuador, Swatini, and why working with us going to give you a different kind of perspective of the world it is. Because right now, is as Julie, Rod, AJ mentioned, all of them basically mentioned that how our lives are if we have everything, but how our lives gonna be if we don't have nothing. So that's more or less quite a bit trying to open your eyes. More or less, these are pictures that we are the working that we do. These are stuff that we have in Ecuador, working in Ecuador, and trying to figure it out how we can solve the problems in Ecuador. We have the same thing in Bolivia. We have the same thing in Swatini. All of these three countries trying to have who are the most correct person to understand what are the needs in our side, in our countries. So are the persons who live there, because we know the people who are living there. We know and we understand the reality that they are lived in the rural communities. The office is in the city, so we have the same things. Everything is, we have all the access to the services and everything. But we're trying to be in contact with this rural area as much as is possible for us to trying to understand the reality. So in these three pictures, you're gonna see how we move it forward on the strategic plan that we do for 2023, 2028. I prefer just to using pictures because you're gonna see more or less the work. It's not everything engineering. That is something that we need to take in care. Because it's not something that we're gonna build something for this community and we're gonna try to work in with this and we're gonna provide it. It's not a gift. is more or less trying to create resilience in the communities where we are working, trying to create sustainability in the places where we are working. It's not something that, oh, this poor community needs water. It's not work like that. We need to create in this community the capacity of the resilience with any kind of problems, not just access to water, just access to any kind of service. It's more or less trying to create a better way for life for them. That's what we're trying to. The first picture that you saw is more or less, the first two ones are the community where we're working near Cotopaxi area, which is right now it's an active volcano in Ecuador. We're providing to them, they had problems with the ash contamination on the water sources. We're gonna creating spring boxes for trying to maintain these water catchment systems for them. And also, part of the sustainability component that we're providing is trying to give them disaster response training. What happens if this is gonna happen? So in this way, we're providing them bags for emergency bags, what they're gonna need, creating a plan, what will the areas they can refugee if this gonna happen. All of that kind of things is in the area of the volcano. Right now it's still active. A lot of ash are in the area, so they are now they are more prepared for any kind of contingency event could happen. On the next one is more or less training in WASH. We had a lot of put on this effort on this company because it's not just giving water, as I said in one point. It's more or less training them how to wash in hands, what is hygiene, what is community health. So trying to, with these components, they are gonna know, okay, my water system is running in this part. I need to change this part. They know how to do it and how to maintain it. That's why all the experience working with this community is exchanging, because all the volunteers are working with them, and because we're working with them, they know how to fix it. They know where exactly the main water line goes, because they are working on the project. They are appropriate of the project. So that's more or less one of the components. The other one is part again of the sustainability components that we had is we're supporting them on how to build the water boards. They need to administrate the system. They need to know, they need to collect funds for sustain the system. So we train them, okay, we're gonna do it this way, we're gonna collect this amount of money monthly, this is the cost, trying to give all the enough tools for creating a way how they can sustain in the future the projects that were implemented. Because we know that we're not gonna be with them all the years. We're not gonna be with them, it's a project, has a beginning and end. That is not something that we're gonna support in. We don't want to create paternalism with them. They need to understand the need, and they need to understand that they need to work for the projects that they want. And the last one that I had is more or less concentrate. We have this picture he is Wilmer Santa Cruz. Actually, he is a professional engineer that we had in the country. He right now is teaching and put all the guidelines with the Rose-Hillman Institute of Technology chapter, implementing a project in the same area, in the volcano area of Cotopaxi. Guide them what are gonna be the specific items and specific points that they need to get for working in one school. So they know, now the chapter knows what specific information they need to collect for presenting a project and then starting operations there. Part of the WASH program that we have, this is a first aid training that we're providing to the communities for trying to sustain the project where we implement it. This activity is part of the hand washing training that we're providing to the communities. All of this topic was being more important after COVID. So basically, this is something that the community really needs, because as you remember, when the pandemic starts, everybody everywhere says, you need to wash your hands at least 20 minutes, at least 15 minutes, at least 5 minutes. But in some point, we said, how we can ask that to the communities do that if they don't have any water? So it was, they need water at least for drink, but we asking them, no, you need to wash your hands for 5 minutes. That kind of things was for us was very difficult to passing that information to them, because they need a hand wash station, they need soap, they need hand sanitation, but everything is easily in the cities or in the places where you can have all access to these services. But what about the rural area? And I don't think it's more or less a Latin America problems where we have, because this area is complementary, have everything, all the services are there, but you just traveling 3 hours from there, you're gonna find these situations there. So most of the projects that we do is trying to collecting that information, trying to approach this level of access of services. So that is more or less working with us in a small picture. The country offices has enough resources for supporting these programs. We coordinated basically this program, not just volunteers and us. Since we are locally, we have the agreements with local universities, local government entities, for trying to support the project, even for trying to in some way funding of the projects. So what we need is to trying to increasing this impact to the other communities that we have, because just in the small numbers, maybe I'm not very accurate on this, but it's more or less 50% of the country, of the rural area, don't have access to water. So basically we're going to try to decrease the number and having more communities with access at least for water. So again, the problem is not solving, installing something. Many other things are going to be part of this. Training, workshops, trying to figure it out how we can sustain the project in the future. So that's more or less the small things regarding Engineers in Action. Thank you.
All right, so thank you so much for watching today. We are really trying to expand our international community so that the Chicago chapter has opportunities to not only go on study tours, like our opportunity to go to Australia, but also to do volunteer projects in other countries. So if you're interested in Engineers in Action or trying to help us put together a project, just contact me. I'm Karen Case. I'm with Hampton, Lindsay, and Renwick, and I'm the International Committee Chair. My email address is kkase@hlreng.com, and I'll get you hooked up with us, so it'll be great. Thanks so much.